Good evening, everybody. We're going to be talking again about the U.S. Constitution, and we're going to be talking about Article 2, Section 1. I had already talked about a lot of this in my last video, and I'm going to go ahead and go on with my discussion here. Where I left off was in the case of a removal of president from office. Okay, now let's say the president is removed from office. Now this could happen during an impeachment. It could happen because he dies. It could happen because he gets sick of the job and he resigns. Or it could happen because he gets really bad. Let's say he gets a real bad case of pneumonia and he gets so sick that he can't discharge his duties anymore. Well then, as soon as that happens, the vice president becomes president until the president can come back. Now in the case of resignation, he doesn't come back. In the case of an impeachment, he doesn't come back. In the case of death, he doesn't come back. But if he gets infirmed, he can come back. But the vice president becomes president until the president can come back. Okay? Now, let's say that the president and the vice president are either infirmed or both of them die. Can't imagine that, but both of them dying. Let's say both of them decide they want to just quit, or both of them get impeached. Then Congress can appoint somebody to be president until another election is held. Okay? So if the president and the vice president are gone, then the Congress appoints another president, until there's another election. Okay? Now, the president can receive compensation, a salary, for his job, and that salary is set at the moment of his election. And what it basically happens is they tell the president, okay, this is the salary you're going to receive each year of the 4 years you're going to be in office. Okay? And that salary will never go up, and it will never go down. That is your salary for the next 4 years. Alright? And so the president cannot ask anybody for any other funding. Okay? He can't go to Congress later on and say, I want a pay raise. He certainly can't go off on his weekends and become a fry clerk for Kentucky Fried Chicken or something like that. Whatever his salary is at the time of his election, that's his salary for the next 4 years. It doesn't go up and it doesn't go down. Okay, it's not adjusted for inflation or anything like that. Alright, so what he gets is what he gets. He doesn't like it, that's tough. But there you go. Now, when they were talking about emolument, okay, there's a word called emolument, that is receiving an additional type of compensation. An emolument is a compensation of some kind, and like I said, the president cannot receive any more money than what is stated at the time of his election. That's his salary. Tough, too bad. Okay, so I wanted to clear that one up with you. He has to take an oath, and this oath is written clearly in the United States Constitution. And you'll hear this every time a president is elected, and no matter who wins this year, you're going to hear this uttered by the president in January of 2013. And it goes like this: I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. If the guy doesn't utter that, he's still not president. Nice, huh? Okay. Alright. While the president's in office, he is the Commander-in-Chief of the Army and the Navy of the United States. Now, since the Marines are an offshoot of the Navy, he's the commander of them too. And now that we have an Air Force, of course they didn't have an Air Force at that time, but now that we do have an Air Force, he's the Commander-in-Chief of them as well. And the President is also the Commander-in-Chief of the militia of several states. Okay? When they are called to the actual service of the United States. And he may require the opinion in writing. Okay, now notice how it says in writing. He can't just call somebody up and say, hey, I want an opinion about something. They have to bring that opinion to him in writing. Nowadays it's done electronically, but back in that day they had to write out a physical document. Okay. Of the principal officers in each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices, and he shall have power to grant reprieves. Okay, now let's stop there. We have the Department of the Interior, the Department of Justice, the Department of this, the Department of that, the Department of Homeland Security. So anytime the President asks for an opinion from these people, their head officials have to write out in writing what their opinion is and then submit it to the President for him to read. They can't just go up to him and say, hey, buddy, let's have a fireside chat. They can't do that. They have to set it in writing. Etch it in stone. Okay? Now, the President has the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States. Okay? So if somebody commits treason, the President has the power to pardon them. If somebody commits murder, the President can pardon these people. That's one thing he can do. It's just like the governor. The governor can pardon somebody that's going to be executed. Same with the President. That doesn't mean he will. I'm just saying he can. And he can do this for everything except cases of impeachment. He cannot pardon somebody for an impeachment. He doesn't have that power. Okay? With the advice and the consent of the Senate, the President can make treaties, provided that 2/3 of the Senate agree with him. Okay? So when he's making out this treaty, he has to get 2/3 of Congress to agree to the terms of the treaty that he's making out. If they don't, he can't make the treaty. So in other words, the President can't just whip up a treaty and say, here you go. He has to get the approval of 2/3 of Congress, or that treaty is no good. Alright? And the President can nominate with the advice and the consent of Senate. Okay? So he can't just nominate anybody. Okay? So he figures somebody to nominate, and then the Senate says, okay, I like this guy that you're nominating, so that it can go through. And the President could appoint ambassadors. He can appoint public ministers and councils. He can appoint judges of the Supreme Court, as long as the Senate agrees, and all other officers of the United States whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for. Okay, so I think you're getting the idea here. The Congress, by law, can vest the appointments of such inferior officers as they think proper in the President alone, in the courts of law, or in the heads of departments. Okay? The President has the power to fill up vacancies that may happen during a Senate recess. And he can do this by granting commissions which shall expire at the end of their next session. And finally, Section 3. The President is required to give a State of the Union address, usually once a year. And under extraordinary conditions, the President can convene the House of Representatives and the Senate, and he can also adjourn them, okay, whenever he feels is proper. The President can receive ambassadors and other public ministers. He has to take care that the laws are faithfully executed, and he commissions all the officers of the United States. Now, all the officers being the officers of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines. He commissions all those officers. Now, the president can be impeached, and if he's convicted of treason, he can be removed from office. And if he's found guilty for bribing anybody, he can be removed from office. And if whatever crime he's convicted of, say murder, if he's convicted of being a murderer, he can still be removed from office. So on and so forth. Anyway, that concludes Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution. I will tell you more in a future video, so stay tuned.